Gathering at Jerusalem. My name is Daniel Vallis, and welcome to our channel. We are in the middle of some incredible shadow patterns and appointed days, and also bringing together some incredible pictures too as well, with the bridegroom and the tabernacling, and our expectation to go to the place that has been prepared for us. Right now we are in between the Day of Atonement and the Feast of Tabernacles, a 4-day window of preparation and also gathering when people would now head to Jerusalem. And in our last video, we mentioned that our great hope and expectation is to see this pattern, all the patterns we've been examining, fulfilled sometime before Tabernacles, most expectedly sometime on the Day of Atonement. The Day of Atonement did have high expectation, but we also know that the window extends all the way up till Tabernacles. And this is still our expectation. We do not know the day or hour. I cannot predict the day or hour. All I can tell you is this is our expectation. We see the different shadow patterns coming together. We see the enemy activity too as well. We see the events that led us here with the celestial signs. We see so much drawing us to this area. We know his coming and his gathering is around here somewhere. We have that expectation. And so we are looking. In the parable of the wise and foolish virgins, they had an expectation of the bridegroom. They knew the bridegroom was coming around that time. They had that heads up. They did not know the exact hour, but they had the expectation. And similar for us, we have the expectation. And so we continue to watch, and we continue to see that we are in a high watch time right now. And so we must act wisely during this time, continue to shine bright, continue to examine our life, and make sure we are ready for the bridegroom, because we have great expectation that he is coming in this time period. And these 4 days after the Day of Atonement are very important, because the Day of Atonement was a Sabbath of Sabbath. It was a very solemn day. But also, the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles is also a Sabbath as well. You don't work on that day. And so all the gathering to Jerusalem, to go to Jerusalem where the Feast of Tabernacles was held and where they had to go, these 4 days are when they traveled, when they arrived, when they got ready for the Feast of Tabernacles. These 4 days are the gathering period. Some people might have arrived early in Jerusalem before the Day of Atonement to start the appointed feast times, but generally the arrival in Jerusalem would be during these 4 days right here. And people would start setting up their booths the day after the Day of Atonement. So these 4 days are very important leading up to the Feast of Tabernacles. People are arriving, people are gathering, families are coming together, they're getting their booths ready, they're getting the meal preparations ready for the feast as well. Everything is getting ready and leading up to the Feast of Tabernacles. But there is an incredible amount of people coming to Jerusalem, gathering at Jerusalem at this time. And the Feast of Tabernacles, as we mentioned before, is their harvest feast. It is their equivalent of Thanksgiving. And the Bible mentions that the Feast of Tabernacles is held after the harvest is gathered in. And so this is very important for us to consider as we are awaiting the gathering of Shiloh's people. Prophetically and picture-wise, the Feast of Tabernacles represents what happens after the rapture, post-rapture, post-gathering. And so we got to remember, Tabernacles is after the harvest. But the Bible also tells us that the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Ingathering, was one of 3 times that all the males appeared in Jerusalem before the Lord. So this was a gathering time. Not only was it the Feast of Ingathering representing the harvest, but it was also a gathering from all over Israel, and even beyond Israel too as well. This was a gathering on multiple levels. Leviticus 23:33. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, The 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto the Lord. On the first day shall be an holy convocation. That word means assembly, a gathering. Ye shall do no servile work therein. 7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. On the 8th day shall be an holy convocation. Another assembly, another gathering. And ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. It is a solemn assembly, and ye shall do no servile work therein. So here on the first day and the 8th day, right after the Feast of Tabernacles, there were 2 assemblies, 2 gatherings, 2 convocations. Now notice that these gatherings, these convocations, these assemblies happened on the first day, which was a declared Sabbath, and then also the 8th day, which is also another declared Sabbath. That is when these assemblies took place. And that reminds us of Matthew 18:20, for where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. The New Testament church also is a picture of the gathering of Christ's sheep, those who put their faith and trust in him. This gathering, in a physical sense, is a shadow and rehearsal of one day we will be gathered to our great shepherd. And it should catch your attention that the word church is ecclesia, which means assembly. All of these pictures are coming together representing and rehearsing a gathering, an assembly, a convocation before the Lord, where one day we will tabernacle with him and him with us. And this is our expectation as we see tabernacles on the horizon, reminding us of the Shiloh passage from Genesis 49:10. We are expecting the gathering. We are expecting the harvesting during this time, leading up to and just prior to the Feast of Tabernacles. We are expecting the gathering of his people. And like Paul taught the churches, this gathering, this being caught up, being snatched away of the bride of Christ to our Messiah, to our Redeemer, this is our expectation, the fulfillment of this Shiloh prophecy. And it has caught our attention that the Feast of Tabernacles is the third of 3 required assemblies, 3 gatherings, which originally took place in Shiloh. All of this is coming together full circle. And so right now we are in the picture and the shadow pattern, the rehearsal of the arrival, the gathering at Jerusalem, the going up to Jerusalem. And we mentioned before that the Day of Atonement for Christians has already been fulfilled, Hebrews chapter 9. So we should not be surprised in the sense that we have passed it. We are still expecting our Redeemer who paid for us the first time to pick us up the second time around here. We have that expectation and we are looking for him the second time. But we are also right at the tail end of the Feast of Trumpets being fulfilled on a larger scale, the shadow of what it represents. The prophetic and celestial warnings telling us to get ready, our bridegroom cometh. We need to rise up and shine bright and go out to meet him. And that's what we have been doing. So the Feast of Trumpets is almost finished being fulfilled. The Day of Atonement has already been fulfilled. So for us as Christians, the only thing that's really still on the horizon prophetically is the Feast of Tabernacles. And for us as Christians, we have the expectation that we are going to be gathered, particularly as the Gentile flock, the other fold, we have the expectation to be gathered before the attention is turned back to Israel. We have the expectation to be called up to the place that has been prepared for us to tabernacle with our Redeemer, with our beloved. During the Feast of Tabernacles period of 7, which represents the bridal chamber, the honeymoon period, but also represents the concurrent tribulation time period as well. And then the 8th day will represent the Millennial time period, which is part of the Feast of Tabernacles. And then it will be taken to another level later to represent eternity as well, where we will eternally tabernacle with God and him with us. So we are hedged in between 2 appointed times. One behind us, the Day of Atonement, has already been fulfilled. And we are awaiting the one who fulfilled it to pick us up any day now, expectedly before the Feast of Tabernacles, which represents the ingathering after the harvest time. And we also know that the Feast of Tabernacles will be fulfilled in the future. And so we keep that in mind too. The Feast of Tabernacles is going to be fulfilled during the Millennial time period. And so we should expect our gathering to take place before the fulfillment of the Feast of Tabernacles takes place. Zechariah 14:16. And it shall come to pass that every one that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem, it's talking about after the tribulation, shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, who is Shiloh, who is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Now remember, at the end of the tribulation, Shiloh is going to come back as the King of Kings. He's going to enter into Jerusalem, and he's going to reign as King of Kings. He's going to rule with a rod of iron. And he's going to be picking up that the Feast of Tabernacles, which apparently is going to be the only thing still rehearsed, the only shadow pattern still rehearsed during the millennial time period, because everything else has already been fulfilled. The body, the king, is there. You don't need the shadow anymore. And so we can see on the prophetic horizon that the Feast of Tabernacles is almost in a sense reserved for the millennial time period. And it is going to deal primarily with the gathering of Israel and the development of Israel, with David ruling as the regent on the throne there too. So there's a lot that's going to happen with the Feast of Tabernacles in the future, with a first level fulfillment apparently at tribulation, and then also over into the millennial time period. So we see that in the future, not here for now. And that's why I'm not really considering the Feast of Tabernacles for us. As the Gentile flock are gathering to Shiloh, would expectedly happen before that event takes place, because that is the next event after the rapture. After the departure, after the falling away, then the son of perdition will be revealed. Then the tribulation events can kick off. But that won't happen till the bride is gathered away. So these 4 days where we are right now are extremely important. Now, of course, this is on the Hebrew calendar, so let's look at the comparison with the Gregorian calendar that we're familiar with. Now, September 16th will mark the beginning of the Feast of Tabernacles at sunset in Jerusalem. And so the 4 days prior to that, the 12th of September, 13th, 14th, and 15th, and the beginning of the 16th, depending on your time zone, these next 4 days are an important time representing the arrival, the gathering, the going up to Jerusalem. And it should catch our attention that on either side of this time, there are 2 declared Sabbaths. One a high Sabbath, which was the Day of Atonement, and then the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. And no servile work is to be done on those days. So we got to keep that in mind when we consider what Christ said about his coming in Matthew 24 and verse 38. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Then shall 2 be in the field, and one shall be taken and the other left. 2 women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken and the other left. And he's telling his disciples, I'm coming back on a day when people will be working, which should tell us that he's not coming back on a Sabbath day, or even a declared Sabbath day. When Christ gives us examples and specifically says there are going to be people doing this and this, then that should catch our attention, and that's a clue that we need to pay attention to. And then he goes right into, watch therefore, for you know not hour your Lord doth come. He wants us to watch. He wants us to examine this treasure map. He wants us to pay attention and dig deeper. And then verse 44, therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man cometh. We do not know the day or hour, but we do have the expectation. Just like the wise virgins, they knew the bridegroom was coming, right around there somewhere. Same for us. We know he's coming right around here. We are looking at the clues that he gives us because he wants us to watch, and he wants us to be ready. Now, when we look on the celestial radar, as I call it, we find out that we are already right on the edge of the hind foot of Shiloh. We're still in the Shiloh prophecy, and as I keep emphasizing, this is a fuzzy line. I can adjust this a little bit. I can rotate it a little bit. So we're still right at the edge. We're still in the hind foot area. We're still between the feet. We're still at the feet, however you want to describe it. We're still there, but not for much longer. In fact, even by the beginning of the Feast of Tabernacles, it's going to be a real stretch, literally, to say that Jupiter is still in the hind feet. And we do not have much longer. I mean, there's only so many ways you can stretch this lion. Because we know exactly where the rear foot star is, and we know where the head star is, and we know where the rump star is, that really constrains how you can twist and rotate and how big you can make the lion here. That really hems it in. You might be able to stretch it out toward September 16th and a little bit beyond that if you put the foot at like the toenails of the lion or something like that. But you're starting to stretch it then. And we're depicting with the gray a moderate, conservative presentation of the lion there, the Chaldean lion. But once you go beyond that, you're really starting to stretch it. And that's why I say by September 16th, you can consider it gone already out of the feet. And you can try and twist and rotate and make it a little bit bigger than that and go a little bit beyond. But again, that's still pushing it way beyond the rear foot of the lion star. And so that's why I say September 16th, which is the start of the Feast of Tabernacles, one starts to get to where they'd be really stretching it to say Jupiter is still within the foot. And then definitely beyond September 16th, you'd be hard-pressed to make a good case that Jupiter is still between the feet of the lion. And we have all this information on our Wise Men's Perspective sheet. Definitely download these reference sheets so you can refer back to them. Jupiter is going to be departing most likely by September 16th, before September 16th, and definitely by the 27th when other events happen as well, which we have on our timeline sheet. Definitely download these, print these out so you can refer to them. This is for your information. We are in the feet of the lion right now, but not much longer. And we've talked a lot about how the enemy knows what time it is too, and we are in the Leo prophecy and the Shiloh prophecy, and they are getting ready for the triumphal entry of the Son of Perdition. And today, the Institute for Digital Archaeology finally announced where they're going to be setting up the arch. they're going to be setting it up in Manhattan's City Hall Park on September 19th, which is right in the middle of the Feast of Tabernacles. And this should catch your attention. They're going to be setting this up most likely on the 18th, the day before, so in a week. And they've spent about, I think, $2 to $3 million on this arch. And they only announced a week ahead of time where they're going to be setting it up. They've been hiding this. They've been keeping this under wraps for a while. This is not on the up and up. There's some definite enemy activity, and we've covered a lot of this in the months before too as well. But they know exactly what time it is, and they know the symbolic importance of this arch. Now, when we look at Lower Manhattan, right here is the City Hall Park. Right here is the One World Trade Center. Right here is the World Trade Center Memorial. And right there is the Oculus Transit Station. And Google hasn't updated their maps of what it looks like complete. But it's a massive winged goal-shaped thing with the massive window and Oculus at the top. And they open it up in good weather. But you can see, just from looking up through the Oculus, you see the One World Trade Center. Very symbolic with all the imagery and symbolism coming together right in this area, particularly with the past events too as well. But one thing that's interesting about the Oculus is they also announced that they're going to open it on the fall equinox. So there's some very suspicious imagery that's coming together right now. They're representing the opening of an Oculus, the opening of a doorway. Right at the same time, they're setting up a triumphal arch a few blocks away from not only the Oculus, but the One World Trade Center and other gateways too as well. They're setting that up right in the middle of the Feast of Tabernacles, which represents symbolically the period of 7 for the tribulation time period. While Christ and his bride are in the bridal chamber, the world and the foolish virgins, the unbelievers, the hypocrites will be down outside the bridal chamber. And they've been very subtle with a lot of this messaging about the Oculus opening and the doorways and the gates and the one world, new world order that they've been working toward, with all the Tesseract imagery there too as well. There's a lot coming together, which we've covered before. I'm not going to cover now. But we did mention back at the time when they set up the arch the first time that they had a very suspicious event at the Brookfield place, which is right next to and right across the street really from the One World Trade Center. They had an art exhibition called They're Coming. And they had several large inflatable rabbits there, white rabbits, at the Brookfield place in New York, which is right across the street from the World Trade Center. And we covered it at the time because they were setting it up right in these gigantic arches, which represent a gateway, which had the World Trade Center right on the other side of it. And here's a satellite view you could see leading up to it and forms kind of a gateway toward it in what used to be the World Trade Center area too as well. They're setting up these white rabbits there at the gateway. Again, represents and looks almost identical to the arch, the triumphal arch. And right inside are a lot of palm trees, and we talked about the symbolism of how they were setting this art installation up the same time they were setting up the triumphal arch from Palmyra. This symbolism and the timing go together. But we also talked about how the white rabbits represented the timekeeper from Alice in Wonderland, which was also coming out at the same time, Alice Through the Looking Glass. The white rabbit, the timekeeper. We've talked a lot about how Satan is going to be allowed to change time once he is unrestrained. We talk about that in our Revelation Spiral of Time video playlist. But it also caught our attention that Trafalgar Square, where they set up the arch, the triumphal arch from Palmyra, and all the palms, which represent a phoenix, was just a few feet away from Nelson's column, who represented the perfect antichrist pattern. His name is Italian, which means timekeeper. The palm tree was in his motto and his heraldry. The palm has long represented the phoenix. Nelson was blind in his right eye. He was missing his right arm. A very perfect picture and archetype for Apollo, Apollyon. And even the column he was on was modeled after the Temple of Mars, the Avenger. And they are wanting to avenge what happened during the flood. But all the symbolism they've been leading up to and preparing Satan's disciples to get them ready, get them filled with expectation as well, because they are getting ready for his triumphal entry. They are getting ready for the son of perdition. They are waiting for him to be unrestrained. They are waiting for the falling away, which is another term, a military term, for the rapture. And we cover this in our article, What is the Falling Away, in 2 Thessalonians 2:3. You can find this in our Google Drive, a link in the description box. So right now we are in between two important patterns. The Day of Atonement, which represents the day we are purchased, and we are awaiting our Redeemer to come pick up the purchased possession. But right on the horizon, we see prophetic events that are going to be happening in the future and also related to the tribulation. and that even the enemy seems to be signaling they know they're going to be released during that time. They're going to be unrestrained during that time. We find ourselves also hidden between two Sabbaths, which strongly hints at the pictures Christ gave his disciples about when he was coming back on working days that weren't as Sabbath or any of the special days. Then we also see on the horizon the Feast of Ingathering, which was held after the harvest. We are awaiting the gathering of Shiloh's people. There are so many pictures coming together right now, but we also see the Shiloh prophecy with Jupiter leaving the feet. We see time is quickly running out on multiple avenues. So definitely download this reference sheet, look it over, examine it. I highly suggest you watch this video again just to catch something you might have missed the first time too as well. There is so much coming together. We are still at the day of redemption in a sense. We are getting ready to go up to Jerusalem. We are getting ready to go up to our tabernacle. Not an earthly Jerusalem, not an earthly tabernacle, but we are getting ready to go up to the new Jerusalem. We are waiting for our bridegroom, our Redeemer, to gather us to himself, to his tabernacle that he has prepared for us. So Christ was once offered to bear the sins of many, and unto them that look for him shall he appear the second time without sin unto salvation. And every man that hath this hope in him purifieth himself, even as he is pure. Let us rise up. Let us go out to meet our bridegroom. Let us get ready. Let us shine bright, and let us serve him first and highest above all else. Maranatha.